Hello everybody and welcome back to our professional development webinar series for parish and diocesan ministers. Thank you for joining us for our presentation today titled 5 Ways to Bring Your Parish to Life Using the First Spiritual Exercises. So my name is Jerry Dees. I'm the Digital Publishing Specialist at Ave Maria Press, and I'll be your moderator and host for today's webinar. This webinar is brought to you exclusively by Ave Maria Press in partnership with the National Conference for Catechetical Leadership, the National Association for Lay Ministry, and the National Federation of Priests Councils. Everyone in the audience is muted today, but you are able to ask questions, and questions may be sent to our presenter using the questions section of the GoToWebinar panel, which you can see displayed here. Please take a moment now to find that box for typing questions in your GoToWebinar panel, and simply click the Send button at the bottom of the right-hand corner to send your question to our presenter, and I'll read as many of those questions as possible at the end of the presentation today. I'd also like to note that this webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent out later this week by email, so please watch your inboxes. So with that, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to Father Michael Hansen coming to us from Australia. So Father Michael is a retreat leader, speaker, and spiritual formation teacher and spiritual director on the retreat team at Campion Centre of Ignatian Spirituality in Kew, a suburb of Melbourne, Australia. He also works in the post-ordination formation program for Australian Jesuits. Hansen has served in several schools and parishes, produced radio and television programs, and he's the author of 5 books, including The First Spiritual Exercises and The First Spiritual Exercises Manual, The Gospels for Prayer, and The Land of Walking Trees. Hansen's academic background includes degrees in the arts and theology. He has developed creative uses of the Ignatian spiritual exercises, and with a large team of spiritual directors, has designed and given these exercises in many different retreat forms, both for groups and individuals. Hansen gives retreats around Australia and abroad, always seeking to make the tools and experience of the spiritual exercises accessible to as many as possible. Father Michael, thanks so much for being with us and being up so early in the morning today.
Thank you, Jared.
Okay, I'm going to hand things over to you.
Okay.
Here you go.
Okay. Do you have me then?
Okay, we're still waiting a little bit. Maybe oh, there it goes. We're all set.
Okay, so we're all set? Ready to go?
Good to go.
Hello, everyone. It's lovely to be able to share with you the excitement that we have with these first spiritual exercises. Giving a webinar is a new experience for me, so you might just be a little bit patient as I click slides and so on. What I would like to begin with is a letter that St. Ignatius wrote to a very good friend of his. It was a long time ago. It was in 1536. And the image of Ignatius that you have there is Ignatius the pilgrim. He was a layman at this time. But he wrote this letter at the end of his life, and he had known this Father Miona for some time. He was a parish priest, and he kept saying to his friend, you know, I think you should make the spiritual exercises retreat. And his friend kept saying, yes, I'll do that. That'll be a good idea. But he wouldn't get around to it. And so Ignatius used to keep reminding him. And finally, Ignatius, towards the end of his life, and he's beginning to imagine what it would be like when I get to heaven. And he says in this letter, earlier than the quote that I have here, he says, I wouldn't want to be in heaven and have, you know, the good Lord look at me and say, but why didn't you get Father Miona to do those exercises? So he writes this last letter, and just follow it with me. He says to his friend, the spiritual exercises are all the best that I've been able to think out, experience, and understand in this life, both for helping someone to make the most of themselves, but also for being able to bring advantage and help and profit to many others. So even if you don't feel the need for the first, you'll see that they are much more helpful than you might have imagined for the second. So what he's saying to his friend is, really, if you're not going to make them for your own good, and I think that since I've found they've been helpful to so many people, you should consider that. He says, but even if you don't consider that, you should do them so that you can help other people with them. So right there in that letter, you have two uses of the spiritual exercises. The first is for myself to make the exercises so that they might help me. And the second is that having made these exercises, I might be able to help other people. Now, I was talking to Jared yesterday, telling him about the time when I and two other retreat directors first became aware of the power of these particular spiritual exercises. The exercises exist in two forms. We can call them the full spiritual exercises. They are given for 30 days enclosed in a retreat centre, or given in daily life over 30 weeks. And that full exercises is really only for a very small number of people. The other form of the exercises, the first spiritual exercises, these are given over a month, and they're given in daily life. And these are the ones that I've researched and published in the book called the First Spiritual Exercises. They're also the exercises that Ignatius gave to people when he was a layman. This was before he was ordained, before he had any training or any degrees in theology or anything else. He was just a man on fire with God who discovered he loved having spiritual conversations. Someone gave him a little book of spiritual exercises for confession preparation, and he prayed them, and then he began to develop his own. And he discovered in spiritual conversations with people, when he shared with them little exercises that he'd written for himself, he discovered other people were helped as well. And so over a period of 4 or 5 years, he began to note down the exercises which helped people. And in the end, he had a little book which he called My Book of Spiritual Exercises. And that's where they came from. Essentially, his own experience, conversations with people, the experience of people who'd made these exercises. These formed the first spiritual exercises. About 7 years ago, here at Campion, where we give all kinds of retreats, silent retreats and directed retreats and thematic retreats, healing retreats, all sorts of retreats. One day I was sitting down with some friends and I thought, you know, maybe we could try giving some spiritual exercises, not the big 30-day ones, but let's just try giving people some of these little ones that Ignatius would have used when he was first giving exercises. So I took one big exercise out of the full exercises called the first principle or foundation. It's a beautiful exercise and it's all about freedom. And I made 5 little spiritual exercises about freedom, and we ran this retreat from Friday night, Saturday, Sunday morning till Sunday afternoon. And so we gave people these 5 exercises, which is to say that we would show them how to make one of these exercises, and then they would go away and make it, pray it. And then they'd come together again and we'd show them the second one, and then they'd go away and pray it. So it was a new experience for us as directors, because we weren't giving any talks before they did the exercises. We weren't preaching to them. We weren't, doing anything like that. All we were doing is saying, here's a spiritual exercise. Here's how you pray it. And then they would go away and do it. Well, we weren't getting any feedback. So by Saturday night, if you could imagine, you had 3 very panicky, fully trained up, fully professional spiritual directors. And we were panicking because we had no idea what was happening with people when they were making these exercises. And so by Saturday night, I'm saying, look, let's pull out the whiteboard and I'll do a schema to explain everything and where they should be. And someone else said, oh, we should do that, we should. And then finally, fortunately, a third person sitting there said, listen, this might be the bad spirit. Why don't we just wait? So we thought, we'll wait. And we did. We waited all that night. We waited all Sunday morning. And then about 11 o'clock, when we were doing the the fifth exercise after they'd done that, and we met in a group, and they began to share back with us what was happening when they made these exercises. And it turns out they were making them beautifully. They were not in any trouble whatsoever. They were gaining the grace of each little exercise. They were seeing how they were connected. They were writing in their spiritual journals with great excitement. And they shared with us what they were going to take home at the end of this retreat and how they understood it and so on. And then they went home. And the three of us sat down and we said, what just happened? Here we are, spiritual directors and retreat givers, and we've just given a retreat, but we didn't give them any input. All we did is show them how to pray these particular spiritual exercises. And they got it, they received the grace, they were energized, they were making plans for when they got home. So we ran back inside and started to make notes so that it wouldn't get away from us. And from that day, then, when we researched these first exercises that Ignatius gave, we just put down on paper what he said he was doing. And it seems more or less as if no one's done this for about 350 years. These first exercises had been dismissed as medieval catechism preparation, as old theology, as too simple for people today, as exercises that could be put aside because, after all, we've got fine programs of adult faith formation. But I researched and we put the exercises down, and then we formed them into 4-week retreats, the same as he did, where people would pray, you know, Monday to Thursday for half an hour each day, go to Eucharist on Sunday and do a little Sunday exercise. And then we road tested them with our outreach groups. And these exercises, as you will see in a moment, they're highly structured and programmatic and very focused. And I can tell you, when we put them down on paper, we thought it's going to be a disaster because Australians, I don't know about Americans, but Australians hate to be told what to do. And so we thought, here we've got this form of prayer where you're being told what to do. You're being told there are 5 steps, and we want you to take each of these 5 steps. So we went out there and we gave them to parish people, to people in local groups, all sorts of people, from well-educated professionals down to people, you know, workers, people from all different backgrounds. And it didn't seem to make a difference. To our astonishment, people loved them. People discovered that they didn't mind the structure at all. In fact, they loved having structure. And they loved how each of these exercises provided a real particular focus. And within that structure, there was enormous freedom. So the heart of the first spiritual exercises is the prayer form of the spiritual exercise itself. And that's what I want to introduce to you and just speak to you about. The basic spiritual exercise, the Ignatian spiritual exercise, is just made in 5 steps. The first step is the preparation step. Ignatius suggests 3 things here. That first of all, I bring myself into the presence of God. Secondly, I make a gesture of reverence and humility. And then thirdly, usually this is the place where you might read the prayer texts. The second step is the opening prayer. This is very, very simple. It's a prayer for help during your prayer time coming. So Ignatius just would say, I ask for the grace to direct and offer my whole self to God. That's it. The opening prayer is important because it's a surrender of the self. The preparation step is about sacred space and focus and bringing yourself into this place. The opening prayer then is about a surrender of your whole self to God for your prayer time. The third step is the desire. This is quintessential Ignatian spirituality. In every spiritual exercise, third step, desire. He says, tell God what it is that you desire. Get in touch with your desires and pray for it. So the prayer form of the spiritual exercises is different from virtually every other kind of prayer form, because a spiritual exercise invites you to pray a particular desire. It's not one that you make up for yourself. It's one that's built into that particular exercise. Jesus tells his disciples when they ask him about all this, he says, ask, search and knock. Do that. Tell God what you desire. Go and bang on the door. Keep asking, keep searching until God gives you what you want. So desire is a really important step. Let's look at the next step, the fourth step. This is prayer, the prayer step, and it's the body of the prayer, and obviously it's the step that takes most of the time of the prayer. In here, the prayer method can be different. If you're using imaginative contemplation, then you might imagine a gospel scene. If it's meditation, you would meditate on whatever points were for the meditation. Or if it's the prayer form known as the prayer of consideration, you might consider, the virtues or the gifts of the Spirit. So in the Ignatian spiritual exercise, the 5 steps are pretty common for they are common for all spiritual exercises. But the content in the prayer step and the method of prayer are likely to be different. The 5th and last step is beautiful. It's just finish. He says, finish with a conversation with God or with Jesus or with Mary, just the same as you would with a friend. So he says, this is time to talk about feelings that arise in your prayer, or to ask for help, or to ask for advice or encouragement. And this last step finishes those 5 steps of the spiritual exercise, and it brings you back out into daily life. So there they are: preparation, opening prayer, desire, prayer, and conversation. Now, I could talk more and more about spiritual exercises and about how a spiritual exercise works, but you know what? Ignatius chose the term spiritual exercise because he was thinking of physical exercises. And he says, when he describes what a spiritual exercise is, in the very first sentence of his book of spiritual exercise, he says, spiritual exercises are like, walking or jumping or training. And if you go into a gymnasium and you want to lose weight, you want to get healthy, you have good desires like that, you go to the gymnasium, the gym instructor doesn't come up to you and say, come over here, here's the weights machine. Now let me tell you about the theology of weights. Let me tell you about the ecclesiology of weights machines and the history of them. And let me explain to you all the benefit that I've got from using the weights machine. A gym instructor doesn't do any of that. Gym instructor says, here's the machine, here's how you use it, and here are the exercises I suggest you take. So I would like to do exactly the same with you this evening. And I'd like to just take you through a very shortened form of one spiritual exercise. And if you make this exercise, I think you will get, through your own experience, really what they're all about, better than me rabbiting on at length. And after we make this exercise, then I can draw out with you some of the key things that make a spiritual exercise a very powerful, a very simple, a very powerful form of prayer that you can use in so many ways in the parish. So the exercise I've chosen is called Progress Through the Fruits of the Spirit. And you can see there they are, the fruits of the Spirit. They come from Paul. Paul has the gifts of the Spirit, the 7 gifts of the Spirit, and here I've listed 7 fruits of the Spirit. We don't have time tonight to do all 7, but we'll do 2 or 3, and you'll get a feeling for the exercise. If you have a look here on the slide that I'm showing you, and you can see point 4, prayer there. When I guide you through the body of the prayer, I'm going to ask you 4 questions. You can see them there. I consider love. What is love? The second question, where is it present in my life? The third question, where is it absent in my life? And the fourth question is, I reflect on the contrary of love. So, if you're like me and many people, you might be saying, well, what is a contrary? A contrary is something that Ignatius loved to use, and now that I understand it, it's a wonderful little spiritual trick to have up your sleeve. Love and hate are contraries, and what makes them contraries is they're not just different, but they're diametrically opposed to each other. So that's what the little double-ended arrow means there. Love is diametrically opposed to hate. Now, what's great about this is that if you know one of the contraries, you know everything about the other one. So if you know what love is, then you know what hate is. If you've experienced a lack of love or hatred, then you know what real love is. So a contrary always tells you about its other partner. And thirdly, contraries are not just diametrically opposed, they move in opposite directions. So the direction of love, moving to greater love, moves in a direction that's diametrically opposed to hatred, which moves in a direction of becoming greater hatred. So, in the exercise, when I guide you through it in a moment, I'm going to ask you to reflect, in the first place, reflect on the contrary of love, and just let it come to mind for you. What is the contrary of love for you? Interestingly, contraries are very personal. They draw on our life experience, so they're very interesting. So I'd like to invite you now, if you would, just to close your eyes for a moment. To close your eyes. And let's pray. We begin with step one, the preparation. I bring myself into the presence of God. Now I make a gesture of reverence and humility. And I listen to the prayer text. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If we live by the Spirit, let us also be guided by the Spirit. And we take the second step, the opening prayer. Here, I ask the Spirit for grace and understanding of the fruits, that I may use them better for God's greater service. And step three, desire. Here, I desire spiritual progress through the fruits of the Spirit. And we come to step four. I consider love. What is the Spirit offering me here? Where is love present in my life? Where is love absent in my life? I reflect on the contrary of love. After considering love, I now ask the Spirit for what I desire right now. I consider patience. What does patience mean to me? Where is patience present in my life? Where is patience absent in my life? I reflect on the contrary of patience. After considering patience, I ask the Spirit for what I desire right now. Now I consider generosity. What does generosity mean to me? Where is generosity present in my life? Where is generosity absent in my life? I reflect on the contrary of generosity. Having considered generosity, I ask the Spirit for what I desire right now. I consider gentleness. What is gentleness for me? Where is gentleness present in my life? Where is gentleness absent in my life? I reflect on the contrary of gentleness. After considering gentleness, I ask the Spirit for what I desire now. And I pray thee, our Father, after considering these fruits of the Spirit, I now examine them as a whole. Love, patience, generosity and gentleness. And I ask myself, which fruit of the Spirit do I have in the greatest measure more than any other? Is it love or patience or generosity or gentleness? Which do I have in the greatest measure? Which gift do I desire for greater service of God? For greater service, do I desire generosity or love or patience or gentleness? And which fruit of the Spirit would give me the greatest inner peace right now? Would it be generosity or patience or gentleness, or would it be love? And so taking the last step, the fifth step, conversation, just for a moment, in conversation with the Spirit, I give thanks for the graces of this prayer. And then I choose one fruit of the Spirit to live well tomorrow. And now thanking the Spirit and moving out of the prayer space, coming back into the room where you are, opening your eyes, we conclude our spiritual exercise in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you. We made that exercise not with the 7 fruits of the Spirit, but with 3. And just with making that one spiritual exercise, I would like to just point out to you things that you will have experienced in making that. And these things are part of the secret of a spiritual exercise, of Ignatian spiritual exercise. You can see in the slide that I have up there, titled The Power and Simplicity of the Ignatian Spiritual Exercise. The first thing that you would have experienced that's obvious is that it's a very structured prayer. It has 5 points in this order and no other order, and leave no point out. It's also guided prayer because the desire is chosen. And it's shaped prayer because the prayer is shaped by your life experience and by how God wants to relate with you during this particular exercise. Second thing about a spiritual exercise is, you notice I didn't need to do any preparation to begin that exercise. All I needed to do was to make the sign of the cross and then read the text. And that's true for all 100 spiritual exercises that are in the First Spiritual Exercises book. There are 100 exercises spread out over 4 retreats. And every one of them has that 5 parts, and none of them need preparation by you. And what's more, the receiver, the person who you're giving the exercise to, they need no preparation either. It's a relief, isn't it? The third thing is, you would have discovered as you pray that exercise, is that I gave you no catechetical definition of the fruits of the Spirit, and I didn't give you a talk on the theology of the fruits of the Spirit or anything like that. What happened was, as you answered those questions and reflected on them and considered them, you poured your life experience into that exercise. No one else. No book, no studies, no nothing. Just your wonderful, wonderful, rich, beautiful life experience. That's what you drew on when you reflected on each of those questions. And when you're doing that, you're bringing your life experience into the presence of an act of God. And so I don't know who you are or what your background is, or I take it that most of you are parish formation people, but I don't know how old you are. I don't know what cultural background you come from. I don't know about your education. I don't know your social situation. I don't know how experienced you are in prayer. And I presume you are churched and you have a certain faith life. But you know what? It wouldn't matter if you weren't. Because with a spiritual exercise, none of these things matter. And the reason is that anyone who makes one of these exercises, who receives one, they just put their life experience in. So a young person puts their young life experience, and an older person puts the wisdom of their age in. Different cultures put their own life in. Street kids put their own life experience in. Prisoners, educated, university lecturers, whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're unchurched or not, or whether you have absolutely no experience with prayer at all, or whether you're well experienced. You simply bring your life experience to a spiritual exercise and you pour it in. And what happens so naturally is that every one of these exercises enables you to meet God directly. So when you're giving an exercise, you're not getting between God and the person who's making it. It's built into the spiritual exercise. That's the little sacred space and time and structure that you meet God. And so people meet God very quickly, very directly. Furthermore, virtually all these exercises are aimed to take people straight to the heart, straight to their feelings and their desires. Nothing wrong with insights and thoughts, these things, reflections, they're there as well. But more fundamentally, most of Ignatian spiritual exercises take you straight to the heart. Number 7, they're Trinitarian. I've built into every one of the exercises, say a week's exercises, 4 exercises. Each person of the Trinity will be addressed each different day. The Trinity, a theologian once said, you know, if all the books on the Holy Spirit were pulled out of libraries, nobody would miss them much. So I think Ignatian spirituality is thoroughly Trinitarian, so it's great to be able to do exercises which introduce each person of the Trinity to someone. Points 8 and 9, every spiritual exercise has prayer texts opposite it in the book. So these exercises are thoroughly gospel-based. Pretty much most Christian life, most Christian belief, they're all there. Over 100 exercises, there's nothing missed out. Furthermore, the exercises that you give in one of these retreats, when you give them to people, either as a single exercise or a group over a week or the full retreat, every one of those exercises are meant not just for retreat time, but for life after the retreat. In fact, they're actually mostly meant for life after the retreat. That's why they have that simple structure, so it can be remembered. Number 10, you can make these exercises all the time. You know, the thing with the full spiritual exercise of Ignatius is you'd make it once in your life. But these first exercises can be made many, many times and given again and again and again. And in our experience, quite often groups that make a retreat or do exercises kind of triumphantly look at us and they say, well, now we know how to do it, we're going to do it again. And people make these exercises many, many times. There's always fruit there because you're different, and the Lord meets you because you've grown up a bit, your life's a little bit different. So the exercises are always different. Number 11, these exercises can be given to other people. So not only do you not need any preparation, but if someone's received one of these exercises, prayed it, and they've got the grace of it, in other words, they in some way they received what they desired, then they can teach that exercise, give it to another person. They don't need any more training. It's no different to teaching someone how to pray the rosary or to teach them how to do petitionary prayer or any other kind of prayer. Exercises, spiritual exercises are made to be out there, and they're made to ripple out into community as one group passes them on to another group, or one person passes them on to their best friend. And then finally, number 12, in the book of the first exercises at the back, we spend quite a lot of time teaching people how to have spiritual conversation. And when you combine making an exercise like that with the conversation afterwards, I mean, how fantastic would it be to hear from all of you what your experience was in that prayer. When you have a circle like that, it's amazing how the Spirit can speak to you. So I just want to finish off by, that's what a single spiritual exercise is. I just want to finish off by showing you the 4 retreats very, very quickly, just the content. And you'll see that many of these exercises you can use as single exercises in just about any parish ministry. You can give them as in a single week because each week has its own dynamic and its own integrity. But when you give them as a whole retreat, as parishes have for Advent or Lent or any other reason, they're incredibly powerful. So let me just, these are roadmaps of the retreats really. So very, very quickly. Here's the first retreat. It's called Inner Peace and Divine Love. The first week there is called Remembering Love. And it's the exercises in this week. We ask people to go back in their memory to a time when they felt really loved and then to bring themselves back into the present. This moving from here to there actually has the result that you bring the feelings that you felt when you were really loved in the past. You bring those feelings into the present. So you remember, you feel gratitude, and you feel loved again. Second week for this retreat is called Dwelling in Love, and it takes the Johannine idea of abiding or dwelling or remaining in the love, and it's the prayer form in these exercises is much more contemplative. We take them through the exercise and people actually are invited to abide in the love of Jesus, or dwell in the love of the Father, or remain in the love of the Spirit. And then week 3 and 4 of this retreat take their points from an exercise Ignatius wrote called the Contemplation to Obtain Divine Love. He had them all in one exercise, but we've spread them out over 2 weeks. So week 3 is love at work. Monday, I remember the gifts I've received. Tuesday, I see how God dwells in creation. Wednesday, how God dwells in me. Thursday, how God works in creation in me. And then in the 4th week, it continues love in service. Every gift ascends like sun rays. Every gift flows like water. Beautiful images. Wednesday, give me only the grace to love you. And then a few other exercises there. So you can see that basic structure that you have there of 4 weeks, 4 themes for each week, but that the themes all connect to each other. The first week there was about remembering your own experience of being loved and bringing it into the present. The last 2 weeks are about remembering the way God has loved you and therefore bringing gratitude and love to surface in you. We thought this would be just such a simple, beautiful retreat. It's turned out to be, over the last 5 or 6 years, one of the most powerful retreats, since many people struggle today even to remember some time that they felt loved. And in this retreat, they re-experience love. Second retreat is called Inner Peace in Darkness and Light, and it's probably the most challenging. The first week gives people exercises to experience love to start with, so inner peace, recreation, encouragement, harmony. Second week moves into the mystery of mercy, and this comes from Ignatius's first week of the full exercises. It's the Father at work in the world, the Spirit at work in my weakness, light and darkness, and Jesus at work in tender love. This is all about the mercy of God. Ignatius termed it, he began with the sin outside us, sin inside us, and the real consequences of sin. I've turned it around here, and we look at the Father at work, the Spirit at work, and Jesus at work. But then we do consider how sinfulness, how dark and sharp that is against the background of the light of mercy. The third week is about healing. Every healing miracle is in this week, but they've grouped into the different kinds of healings, and people choose one of them each day. It's a powerful mirror to the previous week on mercy. In fact, it actually helps you to understand God's unconditional love and mercy much better. And finally is a week on freedom, and this is the very exercise I spoke about, the first one we tried, about freedom. The third retreat is called Inner Peace and Friendship with Jesus. Ignatius doesn't have this, but we felt that you couldn't not have something about the life of Jesus today. Remember that in the time of Ignatius, printing had only just begun. Even copies of the Gospels weren't available to everyone. So people had to teach the life of Christ, whereas we're all familiar with it. This is a beautiful retreat to develop, begin, or deepen a friendship with Jesus. And of all the exercises over these 4 weeks, every single spiritual exercise has its own symbol which people use in that prayer. They bless a bowl of water and they blow over the surface of water like the Spirit did at the beginning of creation. They hold earth from their garden. They anoint their feet with oil, and so on. People just love that retreat. And finally, to conclude, the last one is Inner Peace and Service with God. This one uses 3 different kinds of prayer. The first is praying 5 traditional prayers and praying each word one after another. So the 5 prayers are the Our Father, the Hail Mary, the Creed, the Anima Christi, and the Come Holy Spirit. And what you do is you pray each word of the first prayer until you finish your prayer time, and then you do the end of the Our Father say in a normal manner, and then you do the other 4 prayers, say the other 4 prayers in a normal manner. The next time you come to pray, you start with the Hail Mary and you pray each word, and then you finish that and you pray the other 4 prayers in the normal manner. So it's a cycle of 5 traditional prayers, and it looks simple, but once you pray each word of these prayers, they become layered one on top of another, and synergy happens between each of the prayers. So the relationship with the Father that you experience in the Our Father is present in the Hail Mary, and so on. Second week is the same 5 prayers, but this time the prayer method changes to pray each word with breath. So it's very beautiful, it's very simple, and it brings you into a relationship. You can imagine that an exercise where you breathe in the soul of Christ. It's fantastic. Or you breathe in the Spirit. Just breathe in. It's so relaxing and beautiful. And the final 2 weeks of this last retreat use the prayer method that we've just made. So you can see here we just did you can see Gifts of the Spirit, Monday there, progress through the Gifts of the Spirit. We prayed the fruits of the Spirit. That exercise you can pray either. So just to go back and back. So here, with the same method that we just prayed with the fruits of the Spirit, you pray the new commandments, the Beatitudes, and the virtues. And then next week you pray the gifts of the Spirit, the gifts of the body, which are the 5 senses, and the works of mercy, both the spiritual and corporal works of mercy, which are still beautiful today. So there you have it. You can see how the 4 retreats have that structure of 4 weeks, and you can see how just looking at the headings of each of those prayer exercises that they cover an enormous amount. Sacramental preparation, baptism preparation, marriage enrichment. People are giving these retreats and making these exercises with all of those things. Small parish groups, no matter what reason they meet, whether it's a justice group or whether it's a service group or whatever it is. You pray one of these exercises before your normal meeting and it will totally change the way that you converse and meet together. So I think I'll stop there at this point and open it up to questions.
Great. Great. Thanks, Father Michael, for the terrific presentation and also for that meditation. I think just watching the people, and you can kind of see the attentiveness, and it was definitely spiking there, and I think I myself also had a good experience, so thank you for that. I'm going to take controls back over to me so I can show everyone the questions panel that you can ask now. We have a few questions that have come in already, but if you have questions for Father Michael about the first spiritual exercises, about maybe giving spiritual exercises, or about spiritual exercises in general, spiritual direction in general, go ahead and ask those things now. I'm going to pull some of those and throw some at you. Just the few minutes that we have before we can wrap things up. One is, and I think you touched on this a little bit, but we have Lincoln who asked do you think this first spiritual exercises are appropriate for youth, particularly 14 to 18, just thinking teenagers in a youth ministry program. Do you have any advice for people who are maybe presenting the spiritual exercises or guiding someone who's a teenager through the spiritual exercises?
Yeah, we've got a couple of people doing this at the moment. Some youth group leaders are learning to give these exercises, and they're going to give them to their own youth groups. So that's one way to work with your youth group leaders. The other is, and I think it's a great way to work, if you have younger people, what I would do is sit down and say, listen, we've got these spiritual exercises, we've got this retreat here. We think they might be useful for people. Other young people have found them helpful. Do you want to do them with us? And we'll all sit down and do them, and then you can help us work out what language is not quite right, which ones work the best, and so on. That's what I do. We know they work with young people, and I don't know about young people of that age, but we've certainly used them with people of 16, 17, 18, and university students. But there's no reason younger people can't make these, and there's no reason they can't give them to young people.
Good, I love that. I have a few people that are kind of chiming in, saying they do work. Lynn was saying, kids can do this. I've used this in school, in faith formation with grade school children, and I totally can add my experience as well, is that we really can get young kids to do some meditation and bring, as you were saying, Father, their own life experiences, their own young life experiences into into the meditation. So thank you. Let's see a couple of other questions here that I want to get to before we go. Marianne asked if you could repeat real quickly the 3 steps of preparation.
The 5 steps?
Or there's the 5 steps, then there's within the preparation, the first step.
Oh, the preparation.
3.
Sure, yeah. I bring myself into the presence of God. I make a gesture of reverence and humility, and I read the prayer text.
Good, thank you. And I have a question about, you mentioned a couple of times, and it's the 3rd step. The step is the desire. How could you, how do you determine whether or not your desire that you're bringing into prayer is a good desire or a bad desire? Or maybe there is no bad desires. I don't know. Or what would you say to somebody who's maybe guiding another person through their spiritual exercises if they're asking,
right, okay.
I want this, but is it really something I should want?
Yeah, look, the nice thing about spiritual exercises is the desire's written in. Right? There are other forms of retreats, prayer. Yeah, that's right. Every exercise has its own desire, its own exact desire. It's what gives the prayer, it gives a focus that people find refreshing. So there are other forms of prayer where you bring your desire to prayer, and we could talk about that. But for spiritual exercises, every exercise has its own desire. So you have to buy in, I guess. You might make that desire your own in some way.
But that's helpful. I think these are really simple things. I think the examples you gave, they were simple enough to say, yeah, I can think about love, or I can think about generosity, and that's a great kind of intro. Everyone can have those experiences.
Yeah.
Good. And I've got a couple more people just chiming in and saying that they really enjoyed applying spiritual exercises to the spiritual direction and spiritual exercises to their own lives, that they want to use it with kids and also with adults. So, Father, thank you so much for your presentation and for the example and the meditation that you gave us today. And again, thank you so much for being up all night and being with us here in the oddest hours of the night. Hopefully you can get some sleep now that we're all finished. And we look forward to having you here in the States here shortly.
Good. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jared. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
And Father Michael did send I don't know, Father, do you want to describe real quickly what the PDF is? It's a practical guide to giving the spiritual exercises, or how to give the spiritual exercises.
Yeah, it just puts down simply on paper a bit more than I could give on this session. So hopefully it's practical and you find it helpful. Yeah.
Good. And so we put that on the page where you can find the spiritual exercises. We'll send a link out to this in the follow-up email tomorrow, but I just wanted to let you know that if you go to Ave Maria Press and you search for the first spiritual exercises, it's there under one of the downloads, one of the tabs. But again, we'll send you a link to this tomorrow just as an extra resource. Number of times Father mentioned the books that he's written. Actually, there's 2 separate books. There's one which is the 4 guided retreats, which he was explaining today, the first spiritual exercises. But he's also written a manual for giving the exercises. I don't know, Father, you want to say a couple words about that at all?
Oh yeah, that's great. Get that. That tells you everything.
Helps a lot.
This is the people who made the exercises told us what they're all about for 5 or 6 years. So the manual's not just me. It's great, and it's simple and it's easy. So I hope it's helpful.
I love that. So you're basically saying that you created that based on the feedback you were getting from the participants over the years.
Yeah.
And what works and what doesn't work as far as directing. That's great. Well, thank you. And like as always, we're going to offer a 20% discount for any participant or viewer of the recording, at least for the next week. So if you use the promo code webinar 924 for today's date, at least today's date in the States, 924, webinar 924, and you can get 20% off both or either one of these 2 books, the Spiritual Exercises or the Spiritual Exercises Manual. So I just want to say thank you again to our partners, the National Conference for Catechetical Leadership, the National Association for Lay Ministry, and the National Federation of Priest Councils, once again for their partnership in this series. If you're not familiar with them, please go check out their websites and look for their annual conferences. If you're not already connected to Ave Maria Press, you can find us on all the big social media networks, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Vimeo, and also in the App Store. This webinar is recorded like all webinars, and you can find all of the recordings at avemariapress.com/webinar webinar-videos. We have webinar recordings going back to 2010, so there's over 50 webinars there for you to view and participate in and add to your own spiritual development and also your own professional development. Okay, and finally, next Tuesday, October 1st, we are hosting another webinar roundtable discussion. If you remember earlier this year, we had one about new media and the new evangelization. We're going to focus specifically on mobile. So a recent study found that 90% of American adults have cell phones and over 50% have smartphones, making the cell phone the most quickly adopted consumer technology in the history of the world. And with the new iPhones coming out just last week, this is kind of I think good, well-timed. So come join us for a presentation or just a discussion from people from all over the United States who have created mobile technologies, created mobile apps in their own diocese. Sean Ader from the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, Cindy Black from the Diocese of Fort Wayne South Bend, Sarah Mealy and Craig Berry from the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Minneapolis, and Patrick Leinen, who is in our diocese of Fort Wayne South Bend and is one of the founders of the Little iApps iPhone application company. So next Tuesday at 1 o'clock, next Tuesday at 1 October 1st at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Hope to see you there. Thank you so much.